Hello guys, welcome to the knowledge domain, the concept of life sciences and biotechnology. In this gastrointestinal physiology, in the previous lectures we have learned the structure of the GI tract, the entry nervous system and the extrinsic autonomic nervous system, the GI hormones, the paracrines, neurocrines. After that we are going to learn on this lecture the gastrointestinal motility. So most of the smooth muscles of the GI tract are unitary smooth muscles, means it is involuntary. The exceptions are the pharynx because we swallow something, and it includes the upper one third of the esophagus that is also part of the swallowing, so it is voluntary, and the external anal sphincter, all of which are striated muscles because these are the voluntary muscles. The depolarization leads to the contraction of the muscle. So when a circular muscle is contracted, it decreases the diameter of the lumen of the GI tract. Whereas when a longitudinal muscle contracts, the segment of the GI tract, the length of the segment decreases. The phagic contraction happens in esophagus, gastric antrum, and the small intestine. Phagic contraction means they contract and relax periodically, means to and fro movement. But the tonic contraction is seen in lower esophageal sphincter, oral stoma, ileocecal, and the internal anal sphincter. So, what is a tonic contraction? There is a sustained contraction to maintain a continual muscular tension in the tonic contraction. That's why the sphincters are having the characters of the tonic contraction. So, what type of the movement we can see in the GI tract? The characteristic movement of the GI tract muscles are the slow waves that originate in the interstitial cells of the cardiac that act as the pacemaker for the GI tract smooth muscles. So there is a cyclic opening of the calcium channels that lead to the depolarization. We can see here there is a depolarization here, and followed by the opening of the potassium channel that lead to the repolarization. The slow waves, it is not an action potential, but it determines the pattern of the action potential that we can see at the peak of the slow waves. There is a action potential spikes, okay, that superimposed with the peak of the slow waves. So when the depolarization happens, it takes the level of the depolarization of the smooth muscles to a threshold level. When they reach the threshold level, there the action potential spike that is seen at the peak of the slow waves. So when there is a slow wave that is superimposed with the action potential that coincide with the tension of the muscles present in the GI tract, tension means there is a contraction. So it can be circular muscle contraction, it can be longitudinal muscle contraction, they are in the coordination. So slow waves itself is not an action potential, but it determines the pattern of the action potential because the depolarization that happens in the slow waves, they take the depolarization level to a threshold, and when it reaches the threshold, there is an action potential. And because of that, there is contraction. So the frequency of the slow waves, it is found throughout the GI tract, but it varies from the in the different parts of the GI tract. Like it is lowest in the stomach, that there are 3 slow waves per minute, or it is the highest in the duodenum. There are 12 slow waves per minute. So next is the activities like the chewing, swallowing, and the esophageal peristalsis. So chewing, it lubricates food by mixing with the saliva, and because of that there is a decrease in the size of the food particles, followed by the swallowing. So during this swallowing, the nasopharynx that closes, the glottis it closes, larynx is elevated, and the primary peristalsis begins in the pharynx. So the objective of the activity is that the food should not move into the trachea, so or the windpipe. So those parts which lead into the windpipe, they are closed, and the esophagus opening or the upper esophageal sphincter, it will open. So the pharynx, the peristalsis begins in the pharynx, and it is coordinated in the medulla, means whatever voluntary action is taking place in the swallowing process, and the nerve fiber those are responsible are the vagus and the glossopharyngeal nerves. Followed by esophageal motility that propel the swallowed food into the stomach. So it is the intermediate between the pharynx and the stomach. And relaxation is vagal mediated, and the neurocrine is the VIP. The primary contraction in the esophagus create an area of the higher pressure, means behind the food bolus, and there is a relaxation in front of the food bolus. Like this, the slow waves or the movement of the esophagus muscles, it proceeds toward the stomach, and this process is the peristalsis, and because of that, the food that is taken from the pharynx, it reaches to the stomach. So in the stomach, we will see the gastric motility. So before that, we know that there are three parts of the stomach. The fundus means towards the esophagus, the body, and the antrum towards the duodenum. And it can be divided into two parts. That means towards the mouth of the esophagus, the past proximal half can be called as ORAD, from the oral, ORED, ORAD region of the stomach. And there is a caudate, meaning the lower half of the body of the stomach, and the antrum are known as the caudate of the stomach. So in the structure of the GI tract, body means gut wall, we have seen there are two types of the muscles. One is the circular muscles, another is the longitudinal muscle. But in case of the stomach, there is an additional layer of the muscles, that is the oblique layer muscles. So the ORAD region I have already discussed, fundus and the proximal body. They contain the oxyntic glands, and it receives the ingested milk. For the caudate region, it contains the antrum and the distal body. Contraction that makes food and propel it into the duodenum, and because of this, there is the digestion takes place, and the food is further fragmented into the smaller pieces. So from when the esophagus food they move to the stomach in the first process, there is a secondary peristaltic contraction that clears the remaining food present in the esophagus. So there is a receptive relaxation in the stomach, that is cholecystokinin dependent, and it is the vagovagal reflex because it is the vagus nerve that is initiated by the distension of the stomach that we have discussed. So when the stomach is distended, there is a receptive relaxation of the stomach so that the food can be received in the stomach. And there is a mixing in the digestion. This is possible because the gastric contraction that increased by the vagal stimulation. And in the stomach, we know that the slow Fs is 3 to 5 per minute. And in the antrum region, there is a retropropulsion. It means the food, the sphincter present on the chordate region as well as the present on the chordate region of the stomach, both are closed. But the food, it will move it will move forward and the backward by the contraction of the stomach muscles in the antrum region. So this is known as the retropropulsion, and this is decreased by the sympathetic stimulation, the mixing and the digestion process. During the fasting also, there is the migrating myoelectric complexes. That means because of the 90-minute, it happens in the 90-minute interval and clear the stomach of the residual food, and it is mediated by the motility. So when there is a fast also, there is the movement of the stomach happens in 90-minute interval to clear any residual food. So this is the gastric emptying. After the food is received by the stomach, then it is mixed by the retropropulsion. Then there are the enzymes present there that will be discussed in the one of the following lectures, how the food are digested in the various parts of the GI tract. So after all these events, the food present in the stomach has to be moved forward, means towards for the further digestion and the absorption as well as the defecation. So there has to be the gastric emptying, and it is the rate of the gastric emptying is fastest when the stomach contents are isotonic towards the plasma, means whatever tonicity of the food is present, it is isotonic. Then fat inhibits the gastric. As long as there is enough fat is present in the food of the stomach, then it will not move toward the duodenum, and it means the time required food to be present in the stomach will increase, and it stimulates the release of the CCK, and the H plus means it is in the duodenum and inhibit the gas emptying, means it is not properly neutralized by the bicarbonate. So as long as the food in the duodenum is not alkaline, the gastric emptying will not happen. And as long as the fat is present in the food, gastric emptying is inhibited. So there are the H plus receptor present in the duodenum that send the signal to the enteric nervous system to the gastric smooth muscles to inhibit the gastric emptying. After the stomach, we have the small intestine. So we have discussed the segmented contraction. Segmentation, it is a long part, there is a segment, and based on the segment, there is a contraction. So small intestine motility is responsible for digestion and the absorption of the nutrient. It mixes nutrients with the digestive enzyme so that every part of the chyme or the food bolus will be exposed to the enzyme to be digested, and it also led to the exposure of the chyme into the absorptive mucosa surface so that they will be absorbed into the plasma or the intestinal epithelium, or then to the plasma. That is also known as the assimilation, and it propels any non-absorbed material to the large intestine to be defecated. And the slow F's frequency is 12 waves per minute in the small intestine. And action potential occurs on the top of the slow waves as we have discussed earlier, and because of that there is a contraction. Parasympathetic stimulation increases intestinal smooth muscle contraction, like the it is usually stimulatory in case of the GI tract, and the sympathetic is inhibitory in action. The segmentation, a small portion of the wherever food is present, it is divided into smaller sections, that is called the segmentation, and in the segmentation there will be the repeated contraction happens, that is the segmentation contraction. It mixes the intestinal content, the food with the enzymes. Then there is a back and forth movement produced by the segmentation contraction causes the mixing, meaning it will move forward toward the oral region of the duodenum or the small intestine, and towards the caudate region, but there is no net movement of the chyme towards the caudate region, towards the anus for the defecation. So there is a time for this, there is a back and forth movement, but no net movement. This is possible because of segmentation contraction. Then there is the peristaltic contraction. So coordinated movement means the behind the foot bolus of the chyme, there is a contraction, increased pressure, and in front of the foot bolus, there is the relaxation of the smooth muscles, so that it will move towards the caudate region or towards the anus. And so the coordinated propel the chyme to the small intestine toward the large intestine. Ideally, peristalsis occurs after digestion and absorption have taken place, so that the food that is needed by the body will not be excreted out. So after the absorption and the digestion, the peristalsis is initiated. Contraction behind the bolus and simultaneous relaxation in front of the bolus. So that we have discussed. Peristaltic reflex is coordinated with the enteric nervous system through the myenteric plexus and the subnipedal plexus. The other names of these two plexus, the Orbeck's plexus and the Misner's plexus. That is the enteric nervous system that we have discussed in the first lecture of this series. Then there is a gastroileal reflex mediated by the extrinsic autonomic nervous system and possibly by the hormone gastrin. The presence of food in the stomach triggers increased peristalsis in the ileum and the relaxation of the ileocecal sphincter so that it will move forward. As a result, the intestinal contents are delivered to the large intestine. So behind the bolus, there is contraction. In front of the bolus, there is the relaxation. And there is a sphincter, ileocecal sphincter will open so that it will move into the large intestine from the small intestine. So what is happening in the large intestine? The fecal material from the cecum, they will move to the colon. Colon has 4 segments: ascending, transverse, descending, and the sigmoid colon that we have discussed in the first slide. The first lecture means in the first lecture. Then after the colon, rectum, finally defecation to the anal canal. Hostra, like the segmentation in the small intestine, when the indigested food, they are present in the smaller portion of the large intestine, it shows swollen features or the sac-like segment that is known as the hostra. That happens after the contraction of the large intestine. Then in the cecum and the proximal colon, the proximal colon is distended with the fecal material. Ileocecal sphincter contracts to prevent the reflex into the ileum so that it will not move into the small intestine. And the segmentation contraction in the proximal colon makes the content. Because of that, there is a hostra is possible because of the segmentation. And the mass movement occurs 1 to 3 times a day. So through the transverse colon to the sigmoid colon, finally to the anal canal. So in the distal colon, most colonic water absorption occurs in the proximal colon, we have discussed. So the fecal material in the distal colon becomes semi-solid and moves slowly, and mass movement propel it into the rectum. So in the rectum, anal canal, and the defecation, the sequence of events are: rectum fills with the fecal material, contracts, and internal anal sphincter relaxes, and this is called the rectosphincteric reflex. Rectosphincteric reflex. Once the rectum is filled with 25% of its capacity, there is an urge to defecate, but it will not happen because the sphincter present in the anal canal is voluntary in nature. However, the defecation is prevented because the external anal sphincter is tonically contracted. There is a sustained contraction, and this is voluntary. When it is convenient to defecate, the external anal sphincter is relaxed, that is voluntary, whenever you want, and it is filled more than 25% of the rectum, you can go for the defecation. The smooth muscle of the rectum contracts, forcing the feces out of the body. Then the intra-abdominal pressure is increased by the expiring against a closed glotti. This is known as the Valsalva maneuver. Then the gastrocolic reflex, food in the stomach. So a lot of people there you have seen, probably you have seen that whenever they eat, after that they go for the defecation. So this is happens because food in the stomach increases the colon motility and they increase the frequency of the mass movement. The gastrocolic reflex has a rapid parasympathetic initiated on the stomach is straight by the food. A slower hormonal component is mediated by CCK and the gastrin. So the food in the stomach also it initiated the movement in the colon in the large intestine. Okay, and this is mediated to the CCK and the gastrin as well as the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is not normal vomiting, but it happens. That is because of the reverse peristalsis. A wave of the reverse peristalsis begins in the small intestine. So the gastrointestinal content will move in the opposite direction toward the oral region, toward the mouth. If the upper esophageal sphincter remains closed, retching occurs, means you feel urge to vomit, but it doesn't happen because the esophageal sphincter is closed. But when the pressure increases and becomes high enough to open the upper esophageal sphincter, the vomiting happens. So there is a feeling of vomiting that is because of the retching. So the pressure is not enough, but there is a urge to vomit. And the vomiting center is found in the medulla. And you can vomit, anyone can vomit when they're tickling the back of the throat or the gastric distension or the vestibular stimulation, that is motion sickness. So these are the three types of the scenario where the vomiting can be made possible. There are the chemoreceptor triggers when the fourth ventricle is activated by emetic radiation, the vestibular stimulation. Thank you.